From her early days doing improv at Boston College to the Brooklyn wine store she co-owns, learn more about the Parks and Recreation star. Amy Poehler remembers her Burlington, Massachusetts, hometown as decidedly blue-collar, filled with teachers and nurses and the occasional sales manager, and where she and her friends fell asleep to a soundtrack of their parents arguing about car payments and tuition. Needless to say, part-time jobs were all but expected for local teens. Over the course of her career that spawned from those early after-school gigs, Poehler has worked overtime in taking on several jobs, often simultaneously, including actress, comedian and producer, to name a few. Beginning in 2001, she began an impressive 8-season career on Saturday Night Live, before parlaying her success into such on-screen roles as Leslie Knope in Parks and Recreation, as well as behind-the-scenes work, producing such series as Broad City. Here are 10 things you might now know about the Emmy winner. She worked at an ice cream parlor. The summer before she began studying at Boston College in 1989, Poehler worked part-time at an ice cream parlor called Chadwick's, where she wore old-timey outfits, and frequently had to sing "Happy Birthday" to customers, complete with drums, kazoos, cowbells and noisemakers. She ultimately fell in love with that performance element of her summer gig. "I wasn't sure yet that I wanted to be an actor. I was planning to go to Boston College as an English major and maybe become a teacher, like both of my parents," Poehler wrote in a 2013 New Yorker piece. "But when I stood in the dining room and demanded attention, I was reminded of things I already secretly knew about myself. I wasn't shy, I liked to be looked at, and making people laugh released a certain kind of hot lava into my body that made me feel like a queen." She shed her thick accent. Born and raised in the Boston suburbs, Poehler admitted to The Hollywood Reporter in 2019 that she had to work hard to shed her New England accent. "I found out I had an accent when I went to Boston College, which is not full of people from Boston," she said. "Every once in a while, it still comes out when I'm yelling or fighting." She owns a wine store, along with longtime friends and musicians Amy Meyers and Mike Robertson. Poehler opened Zula Wines and Spirits in Brooklyn's Park Slope neighborhood in 2018. At the time, she explained to Eater that the store had high-end brands, along with a big collection of wines under $13 for those looking for a very good bottle that won't break a bank. Although the wine country actress is based on the West Coast, Poehler said that she visits the store whenever she's in New York City. She started a Parks and Recreation dinner party tradition. Parks and Recreation creator Mike Schur described a tradition Poehler started on the TV comedy's set. "Anytime the show shot on location, the whole cast and crew would have dinner together," he said, and Poehler would start by dedicating a toast to someone, and the toasting would go on until everyone had also been toasted themselves. She'd pick out a second AD or a makeup person or a camera operator, Schur explained to The Hollywood Reporter. "It was just the most wonderful way to end a work experience." He named the practice The Poehler, and continued the tradition while later working on The Good Place. She almost wasn't cast in Mean Girls. Paramount was wary of casting Poehler as Regina George's mother because they'd been burned on some Saturday Night Live movies, and didn't want the 2004 comedy to feel like an SNL movie, according to Mean Girls director Mark Waters. Screenwriter and star Tina Fey initially recommended her longtime friend, who had to fly in for half-days to film Mean Girls while simultaneously working at SNL. "From the moment I first saw Amy, I was in love with her," Waters added. "She killed it. She shaped Kevin G's Mean Girls rap." Waters also told Vulture in 2014 that Fey let Poehler take charge of Kevin Napor's racy school talent show Rap in the 2004 movie. "She'll actually give credit to Amy for this, because Amy is more of the rap person," Waters revealed. "Amy definitely coached him on how to do the rap, and she actually gave him some of the moves and choreography for it. She likes to write topless." Poehler revealed in her 2014 book, Yes Please, that she prefers to do her writing topless, later elaborating to Ellen DeGeneres that it relaxes her. "I think it was probably accidental, like I was out of the shower and I was like, I have to finish this thing, and then I was like, this feels really good," she told the daytime talk show host. "As you know, when you're writing, you'll do anything to get you inspired to write. As a treat to myself, I would be like, do this one topless." Her brother is also a comedian. After beginning a career as a real estate lawyer, younger brother Greg Poehler switched gears and pursued his Hollywood dreams. Now a comedian, producer and actor, he moved to Sweden in 2006, before teaming with his sister for the short-lived 2014 sitcom, Welcome to Sweden. Greg, who also made a cameo as an emergency room doctor in his sister's 2019 directorial debut Wine Country, described his relationship with Amy to Entertainment Weekly in 2014. "She and I are actually very similar in terms of our sense of humor and what we find funny and our ability to make each other laugh," he said. "Growing up, we were always trying to make each other laugh, and I think we were both our harshest critics when it comes to that. So I always knew if I could do something that made her laugh, that meant it was really funny and I could take that material to school and impress some of my friends." She co-founded an improv theater. Poehler co-founded New York City and Los Angeles' Upright Citizens Brigade, UCB, improv theaters, which was featured in a sketch comedy TV series of the same name for 3 seasons beginning in 1998. Poehler recently admitted to the New York Times that she's unsure of UCB's future, especially given the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. "I don't know. It's been brutal for us," she told the newspaper. "We're basically using the fire of COVID to start some new version. We're changing our school and our theater to not-for-profit. Whether or not we'll be able to get there, I don't know." Her improv teams have had some interesting names. In their early 20s, Poehler and Faye competed in Chicago's Improv Olympics as part of a group called Inside Vladimir. As Faye explained on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno in 2004, the troupe was named after a gay porn movie that was for rent at the Minimart near we used to live. Poehler was also part of a Boston College troupe called My Mother's Fleabag, which counts Steve Carell's wife Nancy among its celebrity alumni. Amy Poehler's coming-of-age story, comedy's subversive star is defining her own feminism, the multi-hyphenate is building a Hollywood empire with female-fronted hits, Broad City, Russian Doll, and her feature directorial debut, Wine Country, starring SNL pals including Tina Fey and Maya Rudolph, all while dealing with the relentless outrages of the political moment. "It's really hard to not have a full-on panic attack every day. I've been trying to unpack my own deep institutionalized misogyny," says Amy Poehler. "Our generation of women, Gen Xer women, we desexualize ourselves. And that stuff gets really ingrained. I grew up in a time where trying to sympathize or empathize with the male experience was how I was able to be included in the experience. We are having lunch at a farm-to-table cafe in the Park Slope neighborhood of Brooklyn, where Poehler, 47, owns a wine shop. She is dressed in dark jeans and a chambray shirt, the top button securely fastened at her neck. You're So Vain, Carly Simon's ballad to male narcissism, is playing, a little too loudly, over the restaurant speakers. Like so many women of her generation, Poehler is grappling with her own pre-#MeToo assumptions about sexual politics amid the existential dread of the Trump era. But one thing is certain, she has definitely had it with condescension from the patriarchy. "Women are constantly criticized for being too emotional," she tells me. "Can we be allowed to be as messy, as all over the place, as inconsistent and as mediocre as men? Do we have to always be patient, special, nurturing, adaptable? Also, please don't ask her to explain the bad behavior of men, namely Louis C.K., even if they were friends and share a manager, Dave Becky. Women seem to be, unfortunately, the ones that have to have the answers," she says. Whether or not we want to be the ones with the answers. On this second Friday in March, we are here to talk about Wine Country, her feature directorial debut that drops May 10th on Netflix, and stars all her female friends, and Saturday Night Live alumni, including Tina Fey, Maya Rudolph, Rachel Dratch, Anna Gasteyer, Paula Pell and Emily Spivey, who co-wrote the script with Liz Kukowski. Directing a movie, for Poehler, was fulfilling, but not exactly a power trip. "Unlike Coppola, I did not drive anybody to have a heart attack on the set," she says. "It was the anti-apocalypse now." After a pioneering career in improv, she co-founded New York's Upright Citizens Brigade Theater in 1996, 7 seasons on SNL and 7 as the star of cult NBC hit Parks and Recreation, plus a growing body of work as a producer, including 2 of the most subversively feminist programs on TV, Broad City and Russian Doll. Poehler has emerged as a powerful arbiter of sophisticated comedy. "It's a perch heretofore available only to men," Judd Apatow comes to mind. But the vanguard narrative is not something Poehler, or her friends, spend much mental energy. This is after 20 years of knowing her but not really, says Leon, whose early stardom, Everyone Says I Love You, Slums of Beverly Hills, had given way to a drug-fueled spiral that was relentlessly chronicled in the tabloids. I was sitting in my one-bedroom apartment, deep in a Dennis Franz NYPD Blue K-hole before streaming existed. And I thought to myself, yeah, I could play Dennis Franz on TV. And that was sort of how our adult affair began. NBC passed on the pilot, which was called Old Soul and featured Leon as a reformed wild child cum eldercare worker who connects more with her charges than people her own age. But Poehler and Leon's partnership endured. I remember Amy turning to me and saying, "Hey, what is the show that we would really want to make if there were no rules and no network restrictions?" And that was sort of how we began to conceive of what would become Russian Doll, this portrait of a genderless woman who is kind of a cousin of Elliot Gould's portrayal of Philip Marlowe in Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye. Like Broad City, Russian Doll pushes the boundaries of female representations in popular entertainment. The characters are complicated, raunchy and at times self-defeating, but never apologetic. With Wine Country, Poehler moved into the director's chair for the first time. To be in control and start and finish a project from beginning to end, she says, that's what turns me on right now. That she was directing her friends in a semi-autobiographical send-up made the process far less intimidating. I like to brag that we had 20 years of rehearsal basically, she says. A lot of my work, as a director, was slowing everybody down, reminding them that they didn't have to come in and score. Because these ladies are assassins. They parachute into other people's movies and they're the funniest part of the movie. They just kill. But many of them have not necessarily been in the entirety of a movie, with a continuing arc that we're going to stick with.